have a funding gap to meet the cost of development, maintenance, and rehabilitation of the road infrastructure. We also have a severe backlog of the road infrastructure financing, which, if not addressed, the status quo will persist, and this necessitates government to seek for alternative ways of financing our road infrastructure. Back in the year 2014-2015, government came up with a national transport funding policy, which was forward-looking between the year 2016 to 2025, which proposed a number of measures to see how we could address the existing funding. And one of the proposals which exists today was to increase the fuel levy, to introduce road tolls, 3, to also introduce what we call polluter pay, which is hinged on polluter pay principle. Then we have insurance premium tax to maintain proper road infrastructure financing. These initiatives led to the development of the draft tolling policy back in 2016, but this policy was never processed for adoption. And this is where the technical work group sitting here today picked it from. So we didn't really start from the scratch, but we used the document that was established as part of the National Transport Funding Policy to improve it and see how we can have it adopted. So the road tolling policy has been developed in consistency with the Integrated National Transportation Plan policy and the National Surface Transport Funding Policy, and presents how our road tolls will be applied to fund the road infrastructure expenditures. So coming to road infrastructure demand, we all do appreciate that most of our road corridors, their capacities have been exceeded with the traffic volumes. That is demand. And this is very common along our northern corridor, which starts from the port of Mombasa through Nairobi, Nakuru, Eldoret, Malaba. The same is being experienced on our Trans-African Highway, is it number 4, number 8, the one on Athi River, Namanga, through Thika, all the way to Moyale. We also experience the same on Kisumu, Busia. Some of our materials within Nairobi, that is Nairobi current core, the same. As much as we did improve Nairobi Thika, I think we also do appreciate that it suffers congestions due to capacity constraints or some of the, I think, the design-related issues. These has increased travel time due to congestion and stable driving conditions, high wear and tear on the roads leading to increased cost of maintenance, high vehicle operating cost, and even due to driver fatigue or driver characteristic has led to increased number of road accidents. This calls for higher frequency of maintenance and rehabilitation, expansions and upgrade of our major road projects. In 2020, there was a study that was done by the Shippers Council of East Africa on logistic performance survey, which estimated freight cost from, this is in comparison of the East African corridors that we have. The Dar es Salaam to Kampala, which is the central corridor, was at $1.85 per container per kilometer. That is approximately 241 Kenya shillings. While this northern corridor, that is our major road that runs through Kenya, that is Mombasa, Kampala, it was estimated at $1.8 per kilometer per container, which is approximately 244. The same study also depicted the truck turnaround time, which was approximated at 2 hours for the central corridor. That is the road that runs from Dar es Salaam to Kampala, which was at 2 hours. Then the northern corridor at 5.5 hours. This clearly depicts, if at all we are supposed to establish a competing corridor, then as a country we are not doing well, looking at the performance of the northern corridor. On average, trucks in East Africa can only cover between 5,000 to 7,500 kilometers per month, compared to the international practice of 12,000 kilometers, which means we have quite a number of non-tariff barriers that reduces on throughput and extension reduces the number of kilometers coverage per month. So based on this logistic performance survey, it recommends investing in road infrastructure, as improvement in this area will double travel speeds, increase trip frequency, and significantly reduce cost. The report also recommends that the KeNHA improves on virtual weighbridge to minimize stops along the northern corridor. On road safety, based on the previous statistics, we have over 4,000 road fatalities. This is only that which is recorded through the Traffic Police and National Transport and Safety Authority annually in Kenya. The road safety risk factors that have been found to cause these crashes and injuries in some of our major corridors range from speeding, careless overtaking, driver fatigue occasioned by congestion, inadequate road carrying capacity, environmental conditions, inadequate funding for maintenance, vehicle condition, amongst others. Therefore, enhancement of the road carrying capacity has been shown to significantly reduce road accidents. And this is something that we can speak to after the improvement of our road that is between Kenol, Sagana, Marua, where a number of road accidents have reduced significantly. Now, on the funding deficit, today our road network stands at 239,122 kilometers. Classified network, those that have been published, stands at 164,966 kilometers. That leaves us with 74,155 kilometers, which are unclassified as per our road inventory condition of 2023. This means 69% of the Kenya road network is eligible for funding under the Road Maintenance and Levy Fund, while 31% are not. For government to enhance connectivity and maintain the 69% of the road network, the required budget over the next 10 years, that is forward-looking planning period, stands at 5.146 trillion. And the available project for development budget is only 1.096 trillion. Survey on a study that was conducted on the economic impact on e-mobility, that is electric vehicles on RMLF in the year 2023, informs that the estimated annual maintenance needs for the current road network stands at 253.5 billion, while RMLF collection for the financial year 2024-2025 is only 100 billion. Clearly, you can see the deficit from what is anticipated to be done vis-a-vis what is available to be invested in road maintenance. Further, we have a backlog estimated at 500 billion, besides the damage on our road network caused by heavy rains, which normally occur year in, year out. So looking at the above picture and with the financial constraints on exchequer is something that we all do appreciate. RMLF alone cannot sustain the maintenance of our road network in the long term. And this is due to quite a number of reasons. One being indexation, lack of regular indexation of the fuel levy rates to inflation. I think it's been a while since we adjusted the fuel levy rate, despite the sort of inflation that we have as a country. Cost of construction, cost of maintenance by dint of the construction materials that you use for road maintenance and construction has been on the rise due to inflation. The cost of cement 5 years ago, cost of bitumen 5 years ago, cost of steel 5 years ago, it's not the same as cost of steel today. Yet we are still collecting the same shilling under the RMLF. And that's what we are saying. If we don't index that rate to match the inflation, then definitely we might not meet our maintenance needs over time. We also have
improved vehicle fuel efficiencies. We started with the carburetors. We are on EFIs. What are we on now, Njogu? So with a sort of efficiency in our vehicles, which means lesser consumptions, which also I think we have hybrid vehicles today. So the fuel consumption reduces. And by extension, that means collections under the RMLF will also decrease. We have our road network expanding. Today we are talking about 239,000 kilometers of road, out of which 164 has been classified. And if we continue and classify the balance of 74,000, that means we'll have to take care of the additional 74,000 kilometers. And if we don't think of alternative ways or mechanism on how to fund this, then we'll find ourselves in the same situation. We have also projected growth in electric vehicles. If we have an increase in electric vehicles, that would also diminish consumption of fuel. And by extension, that will also diminish fuel consumption. That now gives us the allocation for our road maintenance. We've also experienced decline in vehicle registration, and this is purely, I think, due to economic performance of the country. People are not buying cars as the previous years, and this will also have an impact on the RMLF collection. And this unsustainability therefore necessitates the need to adopt strategies to seek alternative funding solutions for our road maintenance and by extension development. So this graph purely depicts the sort of trends from the year 2017 on the budgets and what is available for road development. So in 2017, we had a need of nearly 200 billion. What was only available from the exchequer stood at 50 billion. So you can easily tell the sort of deficit we have, and this has been the same trend over time. Because of the reasons that I did mention to us in the previous slide, increase in road network, inflation, the development and maintenance needs for a road has been on the increase. While due to other competing priority projects or government interventions, whatever is available under the exchequer for purposes of development and maintenance has been on the decline. So we can easily tell in the year 2023, financial year 23-24, what was expected as a need for purposes of maintaining and developing our infrastructure stood above 300 billion, while what was available under exchequer was just slightly above 50 billion Kenya shillings. This is just a photo to depict the sort of problem or challenge we have with our exchequer. We have very heavy needs, while what we have as resources for purposes of meeting our needs are very little. So that creates an imbalance. On government intervention, government has attempted to expand some of these high traffic corridors through its own revenue sources, through borrowings from bilateral and multilateral lenders, that is AFDB, World Bank, EU, JICA. However, continued reliance on borrowing has become unsustainable as the government has exceeded its debt borrowing ceiling with the current debt to GDP ratio at 67%. While noting where we are at on debt to GDP ratio, government through other intervention is required to bring this to 55% by the year 2028. Exchequer and RMLF are currently the major sources of financing for road development and maintenance. However, given the current budget constraints and projected decline on RMLF due to adoption of e-mobility, amongst other reasons, other sources of funding needs to be explored. Government has explored alternative financing mechanisms such as public-private partnerships, what we commonly refer as PPPs or PPPs, and considers tolling as a viable funding mechanism for road construction in major corridors. Tolling is not only synonymous to PPP. Government can decide and to identify strategic road corridors and toll on its own. That does not translate into a PPP because it's government undertaking the tolling by itself. There's no private sector coming into play. So this draft policy attempts to address the two scenarios, where government can outsource through concession, where they bring in a private entity to provide the infrastructure and toll it for purposes of recouping its investment, and by extension to undertake maintenance and operations of the same asset, or government comes in and undertake tolling by itself. Success story that we have today, I believe we are all consumers of Nairobi Expressway services, and I believe you have a story to tell in terms of the sort of vehicle operating costs that you're experiencing today, in terms of your time savings when you use expressway. Previously, for those who are traveling from Mulolongo, going en route Nakuru, for you to cross Nairobi CBD, it would take you 4 hours, 3 hours. But today, it's only 15 to 25 minutes. Is that not something that we would want to replicate elsewhere? So long as it's considered to be viable, so long as it's considered to have value for money, and so long as it's attractive to the public. So the key takeaways or success stories, we talk about improved functionality, reduced travel time, enhanced safety, improved incident management. For those of you who normally use expressway, today, if you get stuck or your vehicle stops for any reason, be it mafuta imeisha or you have a breakdown, you'll find the person managing Nairobi Expressway coming in handy to help you address and get you off the road. They tow you, they try to address whatever sort of problems that you have so that there is continuous flow of traffic on Nairobi Expressway. And this is what we want to replicate elsewhere. For those of you who interacted with Nairobi Nakuru, the same project was to provide paramedic facilities. In case there's an incident or accident, then the private concessionaire would come in with ambulance equipped with paramedics to evacuate the accident victim and at the same time tow away the vehicle from the scene. Rationale for tolling and benefits to the public: 1 is on improved quality of service and safety enhancements. 2, additional source of revenue for developing, maintaining, rehabilitating our road infrastructure. We also have an element of congestion management through congestion pricing. If government objective, be it national government or county government, and this is something that can be done in our major cities, we want to improve traffic flow within our CBDs. What governments
when we go tolling, we go PPP, our target will be to fund our road projects through private financing. So the private financing will only be looking at the cash flows generated from the project and not necessarily government funding. There has been quite a lot of discourse on whether tolling amounts to an additional tax. And we felt it prudent that we need also to have these discussions with yourselves and by extension to the public. And we tried differentiating what a tax is against what a toll is. And by definition, tax is a compulsory extraction of money by a public authority for purposes or for public purposes enforceable by law. While tolls are fees collected for a specific service rendered or benefit of fund. 2. Taxes are mandatory and apply to the broader public or to all citizens. Tolls are only applicable to the road users at the point of entry or exit based on use. So if you choose not to use a toll road, it's not mandatory. Taxes are consolidated and applied by the government to different sectors. Where you should it's consolidated somewhere, then there is some appropriation for it to go back to provide service to the wider public. But tolls are plowed back into the specific road for further investment except where there are surpluses. So when I collect tolls from you as a road user on a road expressway, I can only use it for purposes of compensating myself for the investment that I did that enabled me to provide that asset, or for purposes of expenditures for maintenance and operations of that particular project. This is where we have private concessions. Where government chooses to toll, then the proceeds of that tolls goes into a particular fund. And this is where the surpluses come. So where surpluses are declared, there are principles that govern how those surpluses can be used on other priority projects. And that is also clearly defined in this particular program. Taxes are abstract in the immediate benefit to the users. It's collective. You don't feel it at the point of collection. While tolls are transparent in the relation to the service provider. You drive through a road, you experience the level of service, any other additional service you consume, and then you pay for what you've already consumed. So that helps us differentiate between what a tax is and what tolls are. On the policy objectives, what do we want to achieve with this policy? One is to provide a clear guiding principle for selection, planning, prioritizing, and funding of toll road projects in readiness portfolio. So inaweka mikakati ya kuchagua barabara. Planning kwa Kiswahili kwa nini? Pole, I come from the lakeside. Kiswahili is not my language. Planning ni nini? Weka mikakati. Basi hiyo. Na ku-prioritize. And the overcome here. We all understand English. 2, to act as a new, stable, dedicated, alternative source of funding. Funding or financing for development, maintenance, and rehabilitation of the road, toll roads, and as a cross-subsidy for different parts of the road network in order to enhance the quality of country's road network. So it acts as a new source of funding for road projects, be it development, be it maintenance and rehabilitation. And what we mean by cross-subsidy speaks to the surpluses which we spoke about. So a toll road can generate money that can be used to cross-subsidize other road networks. So. And then the third one, to facilitate and encourage private sector investment in road infrastructure development, operations and maintenance in order to alleviate financial burden on the public sector. I think that's a straightforward one. The fourth one is to ensure effective governance, transparency, fairness, and sustainability in toll road operations in order to build public trust and acceptability to toll. That's a fundamental one. We need to have a framework that is effective in terms of governance, that is transparent. If at all we collect tolls from here, you need to know what are the mechanisms put in place. How are we collecting? Where are the tolls going? Where are the toll processes going? And how are they going to be utilized? And lastly, to provide safer roads, effective and efficient road tolling system in a way to decongesting urban centers, reducing carbon emissions and reducing accidents. What are the principles that will guide this policy document? One being cost recovery. Toll rates should be set to recover cost of development and or operations and or maintenance of the road in a sustainable manner by ensuring profitability. So in situations where the capital investment has already been done, so what is left is only maintenance and operation. That's why we have the wordings and or. So for example, if you have the Mombasa Southern Bypass that has already been constructed, and there is a clear rationale as to why government would want to toll it. Therefore, the cost recovery element on development does not apply. Not unless government feels that it's valid enough and you want to set the debt obligation that sits with the financials as well as provide the assets. The second policy principles is on fairness and equity. Tolling should be implemented fairly by ensuring that different user groups are treated equitably. And this should apply to the entire country. The next one is on value proposition. The users must perceive value in paying for the toll. I cannot pay toll to use the section between Nairobi to Thika, and yet I will sit in a traffic jam for 4 hours. Doesn't make sense. So there has to be a perceived value that will accrue to me as a user in terms of level of service, in terms of operations and maintenance of the same asset. Toll-free alternative. Toll-free alternative. It will not be mandatory, and I know we'll have a discussion on this, and I'll be happy to have this discussion. It will not be mandatory for government to provide a dedicated toll-free alternative, but appropriate measures will be taken to guarantee affordability. What we are trying to say here, and I beseech us to get it right. If I'm traveling from Nakuru to Mount Summit, on account of, let's take a burden as a requirement that we have to appropriate land for purposes of providing this infrastructure. Government should not be obligated to provide a toll-free alternative, so long as I, KeNHA, can travel from Nakuru to Mount Summit using an alternative, which will be mapped by ourselves. We'll discuss that later during the Q&A session. Revenue risk allocations. Roads with high traffic volumes will be candidates for tolling where deemed feasible, and revenue risk will be allocated to the toll operator or else. On transparency and public acceptance, tolling system shall be transparent with clarity on how toll rates are set, collected, and where the toll revenues are allocated. Environmental considerations should be made on the environmental impact of tolling. And when you talk about environmental, it captures both environmental and social impact of tolling. On efficiency, tolling system should minimize congestion, streamline traffic flow, and promote prudent use of infrastructure. Then on interoperability, government will ensure interoperability between different tolling systems. What we mean by interoperability is, if at all we have more than one toll road project, we're traveling from Mombasa all the way to Malaba, and we have Nairobi, Mombasa being one toll road project. Then you have Nairobi Expressway. Then lastly, you have James Gishuru all the way to Malaba. The tolling systems that are being deployed for purposes of collecting toll revenues for those projects should be able to speak to each other. So I should not have several gadgets for me to cross over the 3 different sections. One gadget should enable me to cross over from Nairobi to Mombasa, from Mlolongo to James Gishuru, and by extension from James Gishuru all the way to Malaba. So there should be some sort of integration between the 3 road projects, as much as we may have 3 different operators. That's what we mean by interoperability. On economic viability, the tolling system should be financially sustainable with the collected revenue covering operational costs, which should not exceed 15%. What we are trying to say here, if you are implementing tolling, definitely you need a toll operator. The costs for that toll operator should not exceed 15% of the revenue collected. Otherwise, it will not make sense. It will eat on what is required for purposes of recouping investments, which were used for providing that asset, and by extension, operations and maintenance of the asset by the operator of the asset. I don't know whether you. So you'll have a toll operator, or you will be the asset provider, also undertaking toll operations of the same asset, isn't it? Then, any expenses that arise out of a toll operation should not exceed 15%. That means the balance of 85% should be available to meet debt obligation, which were used for providing that infrastructure, and also to support operations and maintenance of the same infrastructure. Then on clearinghouse and dedicated toll fund, the government will establish a clearinghouse with a dedicated fund where all toll revenues shall be channeled. If you have different toll roads being managed by one operator, when the revenue streams in, all we want to do is to create a central place where all revenues come into. That's what we mean by a clearinghouse. And once they come in, they can now be rechanneled to the candidate project roads. So they come into a fund. The clearinghouse will have mechanisms of knowing how, from which particular toll road the proceeds came, then they are channeled back to that project for purposes of meeting debt and or any other obligations that exist under the project. Then we have auxiliary services where commercially valuable. A toll operator can develop auxiliary services to complement the toll revenue source. So, for example, here, if you want to establish a petrol station, or you want to establish a roadside stations which has hotels, which has eateries, which has other facilities that can generate revenue to complement what is coming from the toll revenues, then that can be achieved through this particular principle. Inclusivity and diversity, the government will promote fair treatment and full participation of all people, especially the marginalized. And this also speaks to the PWDs that we have. Any form of infrastructure that is put in place must be able to support all sorts of persons that interact with it. Then lastly, on local content, the government will endeavor to, and as far as reasonably applicable, promote the use and acquisition of local content. I think broadly those speaks to the policy principles, and now we go into the legal and regulatory framework. The current legal framework for tolling involves the following key pieces of legislation. So this was a gloss over it. I think these are things that you have interacted with, or you will be interacting with. One, the overarching one is the Constitution of Kenya. Then we have the Public Finance
Management Act of 2012. We have the PPP Act of 2021. We have the Public Roads Tolls Act of 1984, which was amended through the Finance Act of 2020. Then we have the Public Finance Management Act through Regulations 2021, which set up the National Toll Fund. Then we have the draft PPP regulations of 2023, which are a work in progress. Then we have the PPP regulations of 2014, which are being amended, which will be amended through the regulations of 2023. Then we also have the draft roadside stations regulations of 2023. We have the Traffic Act, CAP 403 of 1953. Then we have the East Africa Community Vehicle Load Control Act of 2016. Then the Kenya Roads Act of 2007. Then Government Support Measures Policy of 2018. Then on the institutional framework for management of public roads comprises of the following players. We have the Ministry of Roads and Transport, which happens to be the parent ministry, and they're charged with the responsibility of declaring national toll road. We have National Treasury, responsible for the management of National Toll Fund, and the State Department for Economic Planning, responsible for providing leadership and coordination of national and sectoral planning, microeconomic policy formulation. Then we have the county governments, then Office of the Attorney General, who provide legal opinions and advisories to the implementers. Then we have public entities responsible for roads, including Kenya Roads Board, KeNHA, KURA, KENHA, and Kenya Wildlife Services. Then we have toll operator, who may be public or private, depending on how government chooses to undertake the toll road. Then we have enforcement, law enforcement and regulatory entities, that is National Police Service, Insurance Regulatory Authority, and the National Transport and Safety Authority. Then lastly, we have the judiciary. So we have quite a number of proposed amendments to the legal and institutional framework. Being in the short term, we need to have a directorate within the road agencies mandated with design, construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance to take lead in the management of toll roads. Then we have engagement and outsourcing by government of a private toll operator. Their proposal to amend existing legislation to support government tolling business. There's a proposal also to decriminalize toll violations for mandatory settlements of toll through various platforms. So as it stands today, if you go through a toll road and you either tailgate and you don't pay the toll that you're supposed to pay, it's a criminal offense today. And it's now subject to the court processes. And all we know that all the proceeds that goes to court as a fine, they don't end up coming back. They go into exchequer. So what we're trying to say here, we need to decriminalize that, such that if you are a toll violator, we'll find mechanisms on how we will make you pay, such that that toll revenues goes to the toll operator. Then we have decriminalization of overloading. As it stands today, we have particular corridors that has already been decriminalized this, and this is under the East Africa Load Control Act, which stipulates particular corridors. But given we want to undertake tolling for the entire road, we want to have tolling on specific networks within the country which do not necessarily sit under the East Africa Load Control Act. We want the same to be decriminalized. So if you're found to have overloaded on a toll road, then the toll operator can institute a fine and you pay for the overload to the operator. In the long term, government to establish an entity, and this is just a proposal to have a national tolling corporation as a subsidiary to one of the road authorities, and this will be commercial, purely to provide the road, toll it, and these commercial institutions, what it can do, once you do projections of the future revenues, you can securitize those revenues and use it to develop other roads which will now become candidates for tolling. Implementation framework, selection of road. These tolls will only be introduced on roads which require user charge to be financially viable and either are newly constructed or on crossing involving other modes of transport. To have been improved relative to their previous standard. Remember, we spoke about some principle. The user must have a perceived value on why he is paying for the tolls. And this particular framework that governs elections speak to that particular principle. Or of higher quality than untolled roads, for example, offering multiple lanes and heightened safety modifications, or may have not been recently improved, provided there's a clear rationale which is consistent with either criteria A, B, C above, and further with the policy objectives and principles. On the tolling systems, there should be an establishment of an efficient tolling system that will apply to all toll operators. The tolling infrastructure should be reliable, should be scalable, should be interoperable on all toll roads, and will be compatible with the national tolling policy. Until a suitable free-flow tolling system is implemented, roads identified for tolling will be tolled by way of conventional charging points. That is similar to what we have on expressway. You have physical booths where you stop and pay. Then the design and location of the toll charging points will be determined based on the characteristics of each individual road and the need to maximize revenues. On the toll tariffs will be based on assessment of, and this will be on a project-to-project basis, the cost of developing, maintaining, rehabilitating the road network. So if at all the road has already been developed, the tariff, the basis of coming up with the tariff will only be on maintenance and rehabilitation requirements of the road. 2, the government must also undertake willingness to pay survey to establish affordability from the road users. There should be evidence regarding user benefits from the road use, including reduced vehicle maintenance cost, time saved by the use of the toll road. There should also be a consideration of alternative, whereby there are no alternatives, as earlier mentioned, government will see on how it can put mechanisms for providing discounts or providing subsidies to the users. Revenues generated from auxiliary facilities will also form part of the project. So if you have additional revenues coming in to offset now whatever investment you have, then that will also be incorporated as project revenues for purposes of reducing on the toll tariff. The following shall also be considered: the impact of different vehicles have on the road asset construction and maintenance. So if you're talking about an articulated truck, ile lorry inavuta trailer, the impact it has on the road in terms of the volume it occupies and the damage it creates on the road is different from a small car. So when coming up with the tariff, those are the considerations which we'll also put into place. External impacts on the road use, including congestion and pollution. And lastly, relevant government policy objectives, including those related to balancing between different modes of transport. Continuation on the toll tariff, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads, in consultation with the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance, will determine the initial national reference toll and will sell a tariff card applicable to toll roads. Deviation from the national reference tolls are permitted as long as there is sufficient justification and should be approved by the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads. So if we take today the tariff is 7 shillings, and there's a clear rationale as to why we need to deviate to encourage more people to use the road or for purposes of affordability, then those justifications are only can be presented to the Cabinet Secretary for roads to exercise his discretion for deviating from the national reference tolls. The toll rates will be subject to quarterly reviews and based on inflation and foreign currency exchange rates. Toll tariffs for road assets such as bridges, causeway, tunnels, and other major crossings will be set on a project. Introductory discounts for electronic tolling in tolling operation. For us, effective, we are saying to discount and people to electronic tolling. So if you're some vehicles incentives and the high occupancy vehicles on reduction of congestion for people who are pulling using the road. Discussing it, we are talking here. Discounts will be approved by boards in consultation. Come here, we are to paint tariffs are there of the world. We stands at 39.6. Africa, we have some charging 6 shillings per kilometer. Damniado 8.8 shillings per kilometer. On the toll roads they have, it's average 6.3 shillings per kilometer. Adjustments mechanism for toll tariff, okay, or for exchange. What we are saying, What will only be indexed for inflation is the operations and maintenance cost, which will happen in the future. So the only component that will be subject for indexation here is the operations and maintenance component. It's a mathematics. I don't know whether you want us to go into this, but I'll be happy to indulge you as we get along. So that's what this particular slide speaks to. But where we have foreign exchange fluctuations, those ones will be dealt on a project by project basis on the concession contract we have. Because we cannot tell today that this particular road will be funded through US dollar, or it will be funded through Chinese yuan, or it will be funded through other currencies. So those ones will leave to be addressed within the concession contracts or the project agreements that will be negotiated in the future. Implementation framework on operations. The agency responsible for toll road may outsource toll collections to a private operator to enhance efficiency and improve competitiveness. Toll operators will be entitled to impose a penalty on vehicles failing to pay tolls. And this is something that I spoke to, and by extension also on overloaded vehicles. A centralized payment system will be established to cover toll roads whose revenues will be channeled into the National Toll Fund. So where government will be taking the traffic risk, where government will be taking revenue risk, all the collections will go into one particular pot. And out of that pot, government will meet its obligation in terms of service payments to the private operators. Clearing houses may be outsourced to a specialist private operator. Remember the clearing house we spoke into? Collecting all the revenues, and out of all those revenues, they go to the specific toll roads. It can be a financial institute. Many of the times they are financial institutions. Still on the implementation framework, tolling urban traffic. For urban roads, the following considerations shall apply. Physical constraints, the availability of space to be considered in determining viability and feasibility of the project road for tolling. Many of our urban centers are built up. So this is one of the considerations that we'll be putting in place. The impact of tolling charging points on congestion and traffic flow. Toll charging points that require traffic to slow down or to stop will be introduced where it's economically and financially advantageous to do so. Use of unidirectional charging points or systems of access permits should urban ones be deemed unsuitable for you to decongest and make sure traffic flows. You convert the two directional flow into one. Many of you have been to Mombasa, and the Mombasa County government attempts to do that when you go into Nyali. That's what we're talking about. Ideally, free-flowing will be preferred tolling options for urban traffic. Free flow is where there is no any particular barrier. For those of you who've traveled in other countries, what happens is you only find a gantry, ile chuma imewekwa juu ya barabara, and it has a gadgets fixed on it, and it communicates with a transponder fixed on your vehicle. And the transponder fixed in your vehicle has a wallet where you've loaded money for purposes of paying your tolls. So they communicate, it deducts. So you don't stop, it's a question of just free flowing. Toll tariffs will be determined for each urban traffic tolling. On monitoring and evaluation for any framework, there has to be some aspect on M&D just to make sure you're realizing the objective of the framework. And one will be on operational performance, where we'll be looking at lane availability, average speeds, toll plaza availability, toll plaza queuing time, accident and safety indicators, levels of service, traffic management that speaks to accident management, incident management, and post-crash management. Then we also have notifications to road users in the form of variable message signs. On toll revenues, what will be assessed, the traffic volume by vehicle class, and applying the toll road traffic volume by day, by vehicle class, revenue collected by time of day, revenues generated from auxiliary services, whether we have roadside stations or advertisements along the project road, then revenues from penalties, whether be it axle load or toll violations. And this particular indicator is very critical just to indicate whether we have compliances on axle loading or compliances when it comes to payment of tolls. Operating expenses, we look at the toll operator operations, road maintenance, road operations in terms of incident management, and even provision of toll-free lines. Then on investment indicators, we look at the debt repayment schedule or profile, we look at the debt service cover ratio, we look at the debt equity ratio, we look at the loan life cover ratio. On returns and profitability indicators, we'll be looking at the project internal rate of return. We'll also look at the equity internal rate of return and net present value of cash flows from the project. Asset by class, we look at the road infrastructure, we look at any equipments installed, we look at the auxiliary services, we'll also look at the maintenance regime for the entire asset. Then on financial information, where applicable, we'll have a look to the audited financial statements just to ensure that what is realized is accurately reported. Then we look at the debt service repayment performance and currency standing. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. What I'll need to walk you through is where we see us going. As of last year, we did stakeholders engagement. The presentation was made to the ministry and we secured approval now to get into public participation. And our public participation is scheduled to start from the 24th, not 25th, and we expect to finish on the 12th of March. Then once we undertake public participation, we'll take the views from the public, incorporate their comments into the policy documents. Then we go for a validation exercise where the original stakeholders whom we had invited, including yourselves, will take you to your room where we sit down, discuss the outcome of the public participation, and walk you through the sort of amendments that we made into the policy document. Then once we get consensus, the same will be, the committee will prepare a joint cabinet memorandum that is between the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Finance, which is to be tabled to the cabinet. Once we secure cabinet approval, then it will go for the parliamentary process, where the parliamentary committees will convene and subject the policy documents through their processes. Then once they secure an approval within Parliament, then we'll prepare, Parliament will prepare a sessional paper, which if approved, will now to go for publication as sessional paper at the government printers, and we do envisage this to be towards end of April. That brings me to the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening.
All right, another round of applause for KeNHA for that detailed presentation. And now we can take a minute or two to digest what has been presented, and before we officially open the floor, now that our invited guests are aware of why we invited them, I want to have one representative from the Tasbir to make some remarks, and then we'll have digested the document, then we start the discussion.
Just to notify you, this document was uploaded in the ministry's website. For those who want to access it, you can get it at www.transport.go.ke. The full document is there. What we have as a presentation is just an abridged version to walk you through the salient features of the policy document.
Thank you very much. I believe you represent the Tasbir, some remarks, then we start the discussion.
Good morning once again. Good morning. My name is Linda Batch, an editor at the People Daily. I'm a few months old there, and also a council member, KeNHA Editors Guild. So So our president, Zubeida Koome, should have been here, but unfortunately, she couldn't make it. Same with the CEO, Rosalia Omungo. But all in all, we are glad to be here, and we are well represented. KeNHA Editors Guild is a professional membership organization of editors, and it's also run by a secretariat. And I think we have 2 representatives from the secretariat. Maybe they can wave or stand up. And several of our members who are still in the room, maybe they can also stand up and so thank you so much for this invite. We are glad to walk this journey with KeNHA. KeNHA is a valuable partner, as always supported our programs. At the KeNHA Editors Guild, am I too close to the mic? Yeah, at the KeNHA Editors Guild, we have committees. We have the Innovation Committee, Ethics, Strategy, and Programs. I chair the Programs Committee, and it's the one that plans for our activities such as the press club, the annual convention, which we've been part of, and I'm happy to see that you're well kitted. Yeah, you are unawakilisha vizuri. Yeah, so thanks for engaging editors in this conversation. As we know, editors are the gatekeepers, and before they understand these issues, it will be difficult for the public also to digest it. And being gatekeepers, when journalists collect the news and bring it to us, you can only work on what you understand very well. So we are glad to be here today to interact with you, ask all the relevant questions. And yeah, at the end of it all, we believe we'll deliver to Kenyans what will make our country better. As he was making the presentation, I was seeing that like the proposed tolling policy, it aims to give us good life and environmental sustainability. I come from Nyanza, and normally at Christmas time, you know what happens along the highway. All of us want to get home, but it's not feasible. So if this policy aims to get us some working system, we can only just support it. Yeah, so ask those relevant questions, and at the end of the day, build a better Kenya. So with those few remarks, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Director King, by extension, all the members. And I want also to recognize that if we have difficulties with the legal framework and interpretation, Council sneaked in a few minutes after we started. I would like to take this opportunity and introduce ourselves so that any legal journal that we have can be directed to her. Don't just me the difficult questions. The answer is here.
Good morning. Laura Kajuan, Operation Secretary and Deputy Director, Legal Services Kenya. Karibuni, it's a pleasure to have you. We now know that our story will be told accurately, going from here. As for answers, this is ours. There's no need to dig any further. I think the benefits far outweigh the risk. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a council here to take instructions, even beyond this exercise. We have many councils actually. Do you have one from the ministry? not come. Auditor General, they are all in our secretariat, but I think they must have whispered that the council is capable of fielding any relevant questions. Now, this is our time, this is our moment, and this is our opportunity. Let us shoot all the questions we have so that we shape this policy and move together. We start right from there. Honorable Ming, I believe.
Good morning once again. Okay, let me not call it a question, but I may turn it into a question. Going forward, I think as you're going to the public, still trying to convince Mwananchi that a toll is not a tax, will be a toll order, even after listening to what the presenter was saying. I think it will be a tough call. And then another thing that maybe is linked to what you guys are doing is about the quality of roads. The roads that we have, some of them tend to wear out very fast, and it's like it's a toll station, another toll station, whereby every year the money goes back, money that should be saved and build these roads that you're telling us to pay to toll taxes. So if you could just go back and try to explain that again, I think it will really help us. And I think it's a question that you'll find along the way going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Secretariat were requesting if you could remind them your name.
My name is Fred Dita at People Day.
I think they missed a second. Fred Amina. Thank you very much. My thinking is that we can take a couple of questions and then I will invite the team here to field and discuss. You can come to the table there.
Thank you so much. I have a question around exemptions of local vehicles. I was struggling with understanding how you would be able to, distinguish them. And knowing Kenyans, many people may want to, hide under that cover of we belong to this town. So I would like to understand how you do that. And also the question of corruption. Expressway seems to be working. I want to believe that it's working, but on the main highways, how are we going to be able to control corruption? Kenyans, we are known for a culture of chai. So I would like to know how we control that, and also a clarification on when you say some vehicles may be eligible. Maybe you can elaborate, Asante.
Thank you very much. Another one?
Can I take first the comment? Thanks, Engineer Seda, for that presentation. So the math at the end of it, and the math can be very, those formulas can be quite something to chew like in the afternoon. I think my first comment that is good, it's a good document, but there is as you get to public participation, there is need. My colleague Shimoli talked about language. The document is in English. Have you thought of putting it in Kiswahili? Because you're going to the public, that is another thing that you need to look at. And beyond just Kiswahili, have you engaged people at the lower strata where we are now using vernacular radio stations? Because I'm struggling to imagine what the word toll and tax if I'm broadcasting on Radio Ramogi, what will it be?
How do I make that distinction between a toll and a tax? Because the bottom line is somebody going to be charged for me in a country that already feels that their pockets are more shredded. Two, on the quality of the auxiliary services, I use expressway. One of the things, when I know there is quick evacuation of any stalled vehicles, one serious omission is about 27 kilometers. If for any reason I have a biological malfunction, just a normal need, where do I help myself? That road, each time I get on it, I get very stressed and I pray that need to be there. We talked of the transparency and accountability and the success of the expressway. I may be wrong, but do we have those public figures in terms of collections and usage and how much is being plowed in terms of public domain? In the public domain, so that you can say, the example from the toll station, the money that is earned from it has been used, how will it be replicated elsewhere? And finally, we are also very scared of a new bureaucratic institution called that thing. It's something that because it's a cost on the exchequer, tag cost on everybody else. So in the end, I think these are some of the questions that you face when you're out there, and hope you're ready to answer.
My thinking, maybe we can answer those first, then we take another round. So I want to invite the chairman, even from where you are. I think you can feel if you want to come here a little bit.
Thank you for the questions that we've received. One from Peter, that it's going to be a tall order for us to convince JICO based on the distinctions that we've presented on how to try differentiate what a toll is from a tax. What we are attempting to do, and this is something that I did explain, what we are targeting to charge, because today, Peter, I believe you use a friend, you use the road going to Nakuru many times. I would want to assume so.
We come here to be more visible, so that they don't confuse Fred with Peter.
He used the road from Nairobi to Nakuru many times. And just a rough indication, how much do you use on your fuel? Roughly on your operation cost, between Nairobi to Mount Summit, what would you ordinarily use? 4,000, depending on the vehicle type, isn't it? 4,000 for a V8, that is impossible, isn't it? 4,000 for a small car, maybe. Looking at traffic jam, remember between Nairobi, assuming you're you leave Nairobi at 2 p.m., you're going to either Eldoret or Kisumu. The traffic jam you will encounter between Nairobi to Naivasha, that knock down your 2,000. These we are talking out of practical experience. On a Friday, pick out, you're driving to Mount Summit, the 2,000 shillings, by the time you're reaching Naivasha, it's complete. Then you start your journey from Naivasha. If things are good, through Gilgil Way Station, into Gilgil Town, you're good. Then approach Barnabas into Nakuru Town. That's another section where you can take another 1 hour or 2 hours. By the time you're reaching Mount Summit, maybe you've already expended 4, 5, or 6,000, or even 8,000, depending on the vehicle that you use. What we are trying to demonstrate here, and it's something when we're going to the public, we are currently trying to do an analysis with augmentation of the capacity of any toll road, which means the level of service will be improved in terms of your operating speeds and riding comfort. So if today you are taking 5 hours to ride from Nairobi to Mount Summit, what we want to assure you that that journey time
be reduced significantly to the tunes of 50% of the time, if not 60%. And if you reduce your journey time, what would you be doing? You're also reducing on your vehicle operating costs. So what we want to charge you is the delta in your saving. So if you're using, if at all you spend 6,000 to commute between Nairobi to Nanyuki, and by so improving, expanding the road and improving the level of service, you will now be spending 3,000. What we want to charge is the delta in saving, not an additional cost to your pocket. And this is something that we want to demonstrate practically to the public. And therefore, besides distinguishing, let me say theoretically, by definition, on the difference between a tax and a toll, we also want to differentiate it from a cost perspective. And I hope that we'll be able to convince the ordinary motorist. If, Fred, you feel that will not work out, I'll be happy to hear more from you on how we can do this, because the problem that we have is rain. If we don't address it today, 5 years, 10 years along as a country in terms of infrastructure provision, more so on roads will be done. Then, you spoke about quality of roads. They wear out very fast. And we keep on investing money on our road projects. Good road asset management principles guides us that you only invest in maintenance of a good road. Bad road, leave it for reconstruction. But because of the challenges where we sit today, you keep on bandaging a worn out cloth with something afresh. Do you think it will last? The answer lies with you. But what we've attempted to do as road authorities today, for roads which have been developed like yesterday, we put in minimal maintenance so that we prolong its life over the design life. And with that little input in terms of maintenance, that takes the road to exist beyond its lifetime. Yes, there are scenarios where we find ourselves maintaining roads which require rehabilitation. But what would you do? Because of the fiscal or budgetary challenges you have. You find somebody doing preventive measures in terms of sealing a pothole here. Yet the entire pavement is gone. What would happen? Besides that patch that you put as pothole patching, something else will crop on itself. But I think that's the scenario you're talking about. And that's where we need to get ourselves out of. When we get into concessions or tolls, there are KPIs that will be clearly defined. And the same applies to Nairobi Expressway. If any sorts of failures occurs and you don't remedy it, then the road is deemed not to be available. And that provides a commercial incentive in the form of a penalty, which is either reduced from what would be due to you in terms of payment, or it's something that you'll have now to pay government for failure to meeting the key performance indicator. Local vehicles identification. We've got two scenarios, Madam Linda, here. In our tolling systems, we've got a closed tolling system. Closed tolling system, which is a replica of what we have on the Nairobi Expressway. There are designated entries and exits. And when you enter, when you exit, you have to pay at that designated exit. So the road is closed in the form you have to access it through some ramp, and you have an exit through some ramp. So it doesn't give you room to weave around, escape the road and go elsewhere. So even in urban centers where we close it, the locals will not interact with the toll road because it's closed unless you get it. So now where we have an open system is where you don't have those controlled entries and exits. Tolls are only situated as strategic places. You can drive through longer stretches of the road. So long as you don't interact with the toll station, you don't pay. That's an open system. And
Our principle speaks now to the open system. If at all you have open system, let's not situate it where we have urban or built up areas. Otherwise, for the rest of the road, you can easily interact with it. But what would be the drive for you to get into Vichochoros and come back to the road? If at all we can convince you, there is something, the benefits that would accrue to you if you use this particular road. And that's the narrative we want to take out there. Definitely, there are Kenyans, as we know them. Somebody would want to escape paying 50 shillings, but then expose his vehicle to some damages by so using those Vichochoros. And we will try to encourage people, use this road. We do not expect you to pay extra from your account. What we are targeting is that saving for you to pay, and you will experience greater levels of service. It may be difficult to identify who is a local, and that's why you want to go the open system. So long as you don't interact with that old boot, and what we are saying, we want to shift them further. You can use the road the way you like, so long as you don't interact with it, well and good. Because our target is for through traffic, not local traffic. And you don't want local traffic to be paying just to do 1 kilometer, somebody going to visit the neighbor, visit a relative, or to go to a market, which ordinarily they do on a day-to-day basis. Corruption. Toll roads normally have mechanisms which are self-check. At the toll stations, we have different levels of security. One, you have running videos that capture all the operations hour to hour. Okay? Any vehicles that passes through the toll booth, the vehicle plate is recorded, and it goes into a central repository. So which means, given that vehicles will be categorized for purposes of paying the toll tariff that accrued to that particular category of class, when you pass through, already the system has detected this as a small car, it has passed through, it should be paid 7 or 20 shillings depending on the coverage. If it's a flat rate, it will say these vehicles are passed, there is something due in terms of 20 shillings as a flat rate. So these are all system securities put in place. In terms of collections, those who are collecting tolls will have mechanisms of recording what has been collected, because whatever you've collected should reconcile with what the system is posting. And these systems do not sit with those who are running the toll booths there. They go into a system and want to safeguard my collections, or do not want to have any leakages. Then, for purposes of reporting, and what we are attempting to do, and we're working with NTSA, is to try to integrate their database in terms of vehicles registered in Kenya with what we have for purposes of toll collection. So at one point in time, if you violate, you'll be flagged both on the NTSA system and even on the toll collection system as a separate. Then on discounts, what we're trying to achieve here with the discounts is to encourage people to use it. Tourism. Ukijuaga kuna duka unaendaga na unapata 10 bob discounts. Hapo ndio unaenda kila siku. That's what we are trying to do. And what we've said, there are particular categories that would be entitled to discounts. Exemption is a different story to deal with emergencies for military and police equipment. For discounts, if I use this road on a day-to-day basis, why can't the toll operator give me some discounts? Because whichever way I'll be paying every day, I'm using this road to encourage me to use the road. That's the whole rationale. So frequent users, vehicles with high occupancy, on account of reducing congestion, want to promote lesser vehicles, single-driven vehicles into CBDs or applying our road. So for matatus, you'll get discounts for high occupancy, and 2, for frequent use. Then language of our presentation. This is taken. I think our communications team are working on this. We want to, this is very technical. And our intention is when we go to the ground, Wajiko might not even understand this presentation. So we're in the process of breaking it down to a language that the Wanjiko on the ground can consume. So that's a work in progress. In terms of translation, that's also a work in progress. The document that has been uploaded onto the transport website is being translated into Kiswahili. Similar to our presentation, it's being translated into Kiswahili because we need to communicate. In terms of vernacular, I'll stand again. But we've taken your point, our communications team have taken note. Let's see how we can accommodate the different vernacular languages when we are disseminating to the different media houses, and even when we will be on the ground. Then auxiliary services, that biological malfunction. Okay. That's a sensitive one. Yeah? And I think it's something that we need to think. I think when we were designing expressway, or it was being designed, it was perceived to be a short stretch. But what you're saying is a reality. If things go haywire, what do you do? So that's for me, but as part of my presentation, I did say our target is also to encourage the toll or road operators to provide auxiliary services in the roadside, in the form of roadside stations, which will have those facilities. And if you look at the blueprint that was prepared by the Northern Corridor Transport and Transit Coordination Authority, their proposal is along Northern Corridor we should have intervals of 50 kilometers. So if you're driving from Mombasa, the next stop after 50 kilometers, you'll find a roadside stations, which is equipped with those facilities, eateries, everything else, and you can always take a stop. After the 50 kilometers, you drive another 50 kilometers, you'll find the same facility. And the same will be replicated along all our corridors where we'll have the toll road projects. Then there was something about, can we really talk much about expressway in terms of the success stories on matters transparency? And this is what we want to achieve with this particular framework. We want this framework to govern how toll roads are managed. And there should be transparent processes in terms of reporting, in terms of laying bare what is happening from a cash flow or transaction basis. Nairobi Expressway was a project that was conceived much earlier, before the policy came into place. But that does not mean we do not have safeguards in terms of governance. There is an obligation that sits with the investor to provide periodic reports on how the road is performing. And those reports are normally made available to National Treasury and to Ministry of Roads. And I want to assume those are documents which are publicly available. Moses, is that the case? The reports they are submitted to National Treasury, that is the PPP Directorate, and submitted to Ministry of Roads. And I think those are documents which should be publicly available for audit. And whichever case, there's a function that's to govern to audit performance of such roads so that value for money proposition is always achieved. And by virtue of this framework, we even want to make it more transparent. So we hope whatever we've defined under the framework for purposes of implementation, if at all you have a suggestion on how we can improve it, I think we'll be open to hear you. Then, what about this new institution? If you don't do this, we leave it to the preserve of those investors who normally come, isn't it? And when investors come with their private entities, what is their focus? Is the bottom line, isn't it? Why can't we replicate what Africa has done, where you can have strategic investment through a vehicle that you created on your own to build the road? The road on account of the future revenues which you've projected. So you say, get a loan from banks or investors, provide the road, then the revenues you get, you repay. And that's why we are proposing. Why can't we have, yes, I know exchequer is overburdened. We also know government is winding up institutions, but we need to be strategic, thinking into the future. I would call upon you to check on Korea. Korea, the commercialized an institution that is purely mandated to provide road infrastructure. And they provide it based on his own balance sheet, not government. So you start small with a toll road, based on those revenues you build. Flows increase. What do? You target other roads, and that's why the infrastructure is well developed. If we don't take that route, knowing the challenges that
My name is Eric. We have run a newsroom, the Nation newsroom, and I'm now in communication consultancy. And I can already anticipate some of the pitfalls that you guys will encounter. One, we are dealing with a population that is tax fatigued. You may call it a toll, you may call it whatever. Immediately this thing goes out, the public is going to say, A, I pay taxes to the government of Kenya to build roads. B, I pay a fuel levy. Now you want me to pay toll. You're taxing me 3 times to use the road. And I know what you're talking about, but these are realities. And you'll also be confronted by those morning talk shows. Some of those guys, I don't think really get it, sir. So you'll be confronted with those. They'll be making allegations, we are taxed, we are what. Wananchi mnasemaje? And they'll be very literate, sorry to use the word, but these are realities, very literate contributions, and it impacts on perception and how this thing will be received. So I'm just putting them up so that you are prepared. And I know you mentioned okay, because we've all built on road reserves and everything, so maybe there will not be an alternative route. The best practices all over the world is to provide an alternative route. I think that is also going to come up. And then our penchant to immediately a good road comes, traffic cops mount many, people build kiosks, there are accidents. The reaction of our road makers is to build a bump. In fact, at one point I thought between Salga and Nairobi it will be one huge bump. How do you intend to deal with those?
Thank you very much. That's there.
Thank you very much. My name is Korir again. Shimodi has raised one very important issue that you're going to face Kenyans. I want to start being a Kenyan. Niulize kwanza hii classification na classify aje. How do you classify? Because we always hear it about it. Secondly, the issue of road is highly political. Some areas have good road networks, some areas don't have. Kenyans will ask you, mnatumia
try rectify that. I also want to One more, and then we can go back one
feel good people know that big boys will change. It's not about until it becomes part of our data that you allow us to change. You really understand. So that has I just see what people is from. That requests for us purposes like accidents, a claim, policy. Someone says I was on something about my second. You can actually tell a lot of times it's 7 times. It's a little bit of it. As to whether we will pick it up, that's so I guess there's not a loss. So I think it's something we just have to you know why? You're protected. But you should not expose you. Data that will clearly show anything that will reveal, that will clearly show that you is something that we should take care of. We get many requests for this, but I don't think it has to be under those very exceptional circumstances. Check your interest. So what can do that? Something on something that is rare, but they were there with us in the right mission. We were talking about us. That kind of thing. And they took us to task. So I know where I stand. My friend did it. Because we were, and I think we are doing it. As to whether this will see the light of day, we have to, because we are under the constitution. Again, and accommodate people who are will be affected. Now, how that will go translate? Remember the ministers that this has to go and have given this part, and I will be confident that I will get it affected. But that you feel like you are about to get this information. Remember what KeNHA said? If you don't do this today, 5 years down the road, some other private with that and do it and pay it to us. Not to pay it. It's really a very persuasive idea and just to be right.
Thank you, John, for the investment. The last year, generally, in our testimony, proposals, basically. Besides that, we also have an independent expert employed by the private government job who are the VP of that program to ensure that whatever you cover for purposes of producing the asset is accurately achieved. So you've got regulations that manages the fund. Then you've got two layers of independent verification to make sure you comply with the KPIs defined in that. It's very for us to control something. That's why we're such not only all of you are coming within the big editors, within the goals of the last. And that's why we presented these things. If you fail, there's another thing you need to break down. You probably these are things. We've already tried to illustrate why all of them, that's why it's not going to be efficient. That is what we're targeting is the savings that we are going to do, not your service. And for me, acceptability is a question of how do you manage these communications before they don't get short guys. That's why we need your help. And therefore, we only apply it on around Mariakani where we've employed it. And it's always on the heavily trafficked lane. Able to take the loadings without deformation. So, to convert our flexible pavements, what we see bituminous, into concrete which is rigid. Then the next question is Nairobi Express. Is that really true or it's a narrative? How many express do I need to save time? Much more fuel. Waste my time on traffic jam. How we can encourage the public through demonstration on the costings of using the alternative vis-a-vis the current alternative. Definitely there has to be a regulator, isn't it? And I would agree with you, have an independent regulator. It has to start somewhere. And that's why it starts with the ministry, the parent ministry that deals, you regulate a particular time. And this policy, which has tried footbridges on the road safety, because it's high mobility, high speed. So as an authority, we take it as a feedback where we have road that we're going to provide. And I'll speak categorically for the Nairobi-Nakuru, which is currently under termination. We endeavor to provide these facilities in all centers, from Riro through Kamandura, Bibirioni, Limuru, all the way to Mau Summit, where we had built-up centers, where we had schools, where children were forced to cross. We were providing infrastructure to enable them interact with the road safely. Then, I think the last questions from Eric, I think that one I've already addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those intriguing and good questions. Maybe to just add on one or two of the questions, for the footbridges, I note your concern, especially on Wayakwe, but I can assure you that Wayakwe is not complete yet. On that stretch, we are scheduled to have 27 footbridges. Once it's complete, there's funding issues. On the humps, there is also an ongoing use. We want to use, material that are not attractive. Also, not forgetting A8. There has been about the A8, but instructions have been issued to the contractor. I think we are slightly behind schedule, but have 3 lanes from beginning to end, unless there is anything that will be very urgent, so we can move.
Yes, good morning again. I'm Jeremy, and my question, we all know that the first road to be constructed in Kenya and a toll station was established is Nairobi Expressway, running from public-private partnership, so that the money you could be recovered to maybe to the private partner. I think other new roads, more than 11.1% tax increment. So why don't we
wrap it up in lieu of time? We can come here, the table.
Brings can be, what do you stand to gain when we talk about the congestion and all those things and the travel times? So this campaign should, one of your ways of opening before you even start doing the participation. And the surest way for me, people are willingly taking a matatu that will charge them 10 shillings more to be on the expressway to save, reinforces their narratives.
Thank you for that. I don't think so. Done with the, maybe we can have, move to the next stage.
Thank you for that feedback. to see how we can capitalize on that. We had a discussion, and if we can do it the earlier, the better for us, before we set out for public participation on Monday. We have a session tomorrow, so if we could have some of those things coming in tomorrow, the better. Yes, it's true. Yes, it's true. KRA is doing its collection. Is that true? It's a statement of fact, isn't it? But is the correct collection matching the expenditure needs for the country? Jeremy, if you go to the county hospitals, leave alone challenges surrounding disbursement from national government to county, do they have constraints budgetary-wise? Or just pick any other industry, sector? Education. Are you seeing challenges, budgetary challenges, in as much as KRA is collecting what they're stating? Now, come to a new road. For you to construct a new road, what do you need to do? You have to do studies, isn't it? Then you come up with an alignment. Pali barabara itapita. Where the alignment will pass, our northern corridor ought to have been doing, because that's our major artery. That is an economic stimulator, not only for Kenya, but for East and Central Africa. If we have to do all the section between Mombasa all the way to Malaba, what size of, or what acreage of land are we going to appropriate? Now we talk about maintenance. Man is not even there to maintain. That's why Fred was raising because tunabandika hapa kesho.
And justice to this, and therefore bring this up to us. Unless somebody wants to make a comment, final comment, before we close as we started. So I believe we are not blocking anybody out. So I want to, the chair has spoken for far too long. You want to add something? Okay. The exchequer is here. Why is he not giving us money for roads? That is the question we are being asked.
And as a country, we have a net anchor of 55%.
Good afternoon, everyone. Najua mmechoka sana. Normally I would have asked you to do a coconut. Do you know what a coconut is? So that you become energized a bit. But due to time considerations, I've been given the task of giving the vote of thanks. And we would like to appreciate you, the Editors Guild, for taking your time to come and listen to us and guide us on how we may need to repackage our communication so that we can express ourselves.
Asking Father, we thank you for the moment that we have had. We thank you for the fruitful engagements that we've had from our Auditors Guild team. We thank you for the feedback and the inputs that they have given to us. Even as we embark on the public participation, Father, we pray for more wisdom, we pray for guidance and for journey mercies for the teams that will be moving to